In the year 2006, the Taliban decided to launch a full-scale war against the United States. The beginning of this war was planned from their eastern center, from the home of their first leader Mullah Muhammad Umar in Kandahar. Kandahar is the most important province of southern Afghanistan, and its city Kandahar holds great historical significance. This is the same city where in 1747 the Pashtuns laid the foundation of independent Afghanistan. This is also the city where the mausoleum of Afghanistan's great leader Ahmad Shah Durrani, who is called the founder of Afghanistan and the father of modern Afghanistan, is located. This is also the city where a clock of the last prophet of Muslims, Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him, is preserved in a shrine called Hirka Sharif. It is well known about this clock that it is the same one which the Prophet peace be upon him wore during the journey of Miraj, when he traveled through the heavens riding on Buraq and returned within moments. This clock present in Kandahar is never taken out of the shrine Hirka Sharif unless Afghanistan is facing an extremely severe situation. Only in such conditions is it brought out. You must have seen a famous picture of Mullah Muhammad Umar, which is early and almost the only widely known photograph. In that picture, he is standing at a high place holding a clock with people gathered around him. This picture is from November 1996. The clock he is holding in that image is the same Hirka Sharif clock. By raising that clock, he adopted the title of Amirul Mu'minin, commander of the faith, and people pledged allegiance to him. In this context, it should also be mentioned that this clock was actually gifted to Ahmad Shah Durrani, the founder of modern Afghanistan, by Amir of Bukhara Murad Beg in 1768. Bukhara refers to the region that is today in Uzbekistan. The purpose of giving this clock was that the Amir of Bukhara wanted to establish good brotherly relations with the Durrani Empire. Anyway, Kandahar was an important region for the Taliban for many reasons. The presence of Hirka Sharif, the beginning of their earlier movement from here, the house of Mullah Muhammad Umar being there, and it's being their strongest stronghold. That is why it was their ideological center when the Taliban decided to launch major attacks against the United States. The planning began from here. Thus, in 2006, the Taliban fully planned an open offensive to capture this city. Earlier, they used to carry out covert attacks, like planting roadside mines or small explosions, but now they were ready to fight openly in the field. For this, they were waiting for the end of winter and the beginning of spring, because during winters, movement and supply lines in most areas of Afghanistan become nearly impossible. While the Taliban were preparing for the attack around Kandahar, the United States and its allies were also gathering intelligence that the Taliban were coming into a position to attack again after 5 years of the fall of their government. The Americans not only expected these attacks but also believed that the Taliban's strength and numbers were limited. According to intelligence reports in 2005 and 2006, the total manpower of Taliban fighters in southern Afghanistan was not more than 2,000. However, reality was quite the opposite. The Taliban knew that the Americans had no idea of their actual strength, and this was their biggest weapon: surprise. Before the main attack, the Taliban started small ground attacks to test the enemy's strength. They observed how the enemy reacted, how long it took for air support to arrive, and how the fighters could counter them. The first major test attack was carried out in Sangin district of Helmand, where Afghan forces were stationed. In the harsh winter of February 2006, the Taliban fighters suddenly attacked with rockets and heavy gunfire. Afghan forces realized that the attackers were not dozens but hundreds. They could not withstand the attack and immediately called NATO for help. NATO responded quickly by deploying Black Hawk helicopters and bomber aircraft. We started aerial bombardment. Air strikes were the biggest challenge for the Taliban as they had no effective defense against them. The battle continued intensely for 3 days. The Taliban suffered heavy casualties. More than 40 fighters were killed, and those who survived withdrew silently at night. Dozens of Afghan soldiers were also killed. Although the Taliban did not succeed in this battle, the clash made it clear to the United States and its allies that their intelligence assessments were wrong. After this, the United States formed a new strategy and launched Operation Mountain Thrust on May 15, 2006. In this operation, large Chinook helicopters were used to deploy troops near suspected Taliban hideouts, while B-52 bombers carried out airstrikes. On the other hand, the Taliban were already prepared. They launched strong attacks on key positions around Kandahar. These attacks were led by Mullah Akhtar Muhammad Usmani, while Mullah Dadullah was also with him. According to Mullah Dadullah, they had 12,000 fighters, while the number of American and Allied forces was also approximately around 12,000. In these operations, the Taliban temporarily captured several districts, and American forces also destroyed many Taliban hideouts. However, despite all this, the first post-9/11 limited Afghan-American war was effectively lost by both sides. The United States and its allies lost because Operation Mountain Thrust failed to eliminate Taliban sanctuaries or break their strength. The Taliban were far more organized, stronger, and larger in number than the intelligence estimates. On the other hand, the Taliban also lost their first major spring offensive because they could not capture Kandahar, which was their main objective. Even in Helmand, Musa Qala, and Sangin, where they showed great bravery and briefly captured territory, Allied forces retook those areas within days. Hundreds of Taliban fighters were captured, causing them to lose important bases and valuable weapons. Although there was no clear winner, the war changed the dynamics of Afghanistan's great game. The key change was that after losing over 1,000 lives, the Taliban realized that the only force capable of stopping them in open battle was the air power of the United States and its allies. They also realized that Afghan forces alone could not stand against them, even for hours, without air support. After 2006, the Taliban abandoned plans for large-scale open offensives. Instead, they focused on strategic small-scale attacks because large battles expose them to devastating airstrikes. On the other side, foreign forces also changed their strategy. Instead of acting as protectors across Afghanistan, they limited themselves to defending their bases and the cities where they were stationed. Outside those areas, the Taliban moved freely, and NATO forces often did not engage unless necessary for self-defense. Another major change was the growing differences among US allies. Although it was an alliance of 42 countries with around 50,000 troops, in reality only the US forces were willing to engage fully in combat. Among allies, only the UK, Canada, Australia, and the Netherlands actively supported US troops. The West openly stated they would only play support roles and avoid direct combat. These countries feared public backlash if their soldiers died abroad. The leaders worried that public opinion could turn against them, affecting their popularity and even their governments. Some countries, including Germany, even imposed conditions that their troops would remain away from combat zones. This created tension within NATO, benefiting Taliban. At the same time, another major issue for ISF was the continuous flow of manpower, weapons, and guidance to Taliban from the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. The order, about 2,640 kilometers long, was open and difficult to control. Tribal areas saw the rise of small weapons manufacturing, setups producing suicide vests, IEDs, and bombs. These weapons were used both in Afghanistan and inside Pakistan by groups like TTP. ISAF commanders also believed the Taliban leadership and planning centers were based in areas of Pakistan such as Balochistan and Fatah. This situation gave US and ISAF commanders an excuse for failure and they began blaming Pakistan. However, political governments restrained them because the priority was their own homeland security. They feared attacks like the July 7, 2005 London bombings. To prevent such attacks, Western countries needed Pakistan's intelligence cooperation. For example, in 2006, a plot to bomb 12 airplanes in London was foiled after Pakistan arrested Rashid Rauf and shared intelligence. This showed how crucial Pakistan's cooperation was. Because of this, British PM Tony Blair instructed General David Richards not to use harsh language against Pakistan or allow cross-border operations. Later, when Taliban attacks intensified, General Richards warned President Pervez Musharraf about the threat, but it had little impact. Eventually, winter returned, slowing the war. The first Taliban offensive and the first major US operation ended. In this phase, 98 American and 39 British soldiers were killed, along with a total of 191 Allied troops, while Taliban casualties were in the thousands. Military experts concluded that once the US left Afghanistan, Taliban control of Kabul would be inevitable. The Taliban also realized they did need large battles. Instead, guerrilla warfare and suicide attacks would strengthen their position for future negotiations. So the time for negotiations arrived, but with it came a historic deception, which will be discussed later. Thank you.